Bakassi Peninsula in 2004 and the subsequent loss of 76 oil wells to Akwa Ibom State in 2010 have been a topic of conversation for quite some time now. The Akwa Ibom State government has constantly dismissed the renewed controversies surrounding its ownership of 76 offshore oil wells, maintaining that the Supreme Court decision on the issue is final. The Apex Court in July 2012 had placed a seal on Akwa Ibom's ownership of the oil wells, dismissing claims to it by the Cross River State government. Yesterday, former governor of Akwa Ibom State, Obong Victor Atta, asserted, and I quote, "Cross River is not a littoral state. Being on a river does not make it a littoral state. If oil wells fall within your boundaries, they are yours. If not, they don't belong to you, full stop." End of quote. Joining us on the morning show to discuss the ICJ judgment over Bakassi Peninsula and Cross River retaining its littoral status is John Lebo, a lawyer. Good morning, and you're most welcome to the morning show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Lebo, we have had many guests on this subject. The latest, Obong Victor Atta, elder statesman, former governor of Akwa Ibom State. Now, I'm sure you are familiar with the ICJ judgment,
Sure.
2002, the Green Tree Agreement of 2006, and then the Supreme Court judgment of 2013. There was another Supreme Court judgment. All of them saying, basically, that Bakassi, having been ceded to Cameroon, that Cross River State lost its status as an oil-producing state, as a littoral state, which was the point that Obong Victor Atta was making yesterday. But Cross River State, some of the spokespersons for the state say they want to regain their status as a littoral state, as an oil-producing state, and the 76 oil wells that were ceded to Akwa Ibom, that they also have claim to it. In between, during, I think, was it the Yaradua administration, Cross River State and Akwa Ibom, they reached some accommodation that, okay, Akwa Ibom will give you some money on a monthly basis, which I think Cross River State had been collecting. I don't know the status of that collection now. But now, what does Cross River State, what does he really want to do? What is he looking at? Is he planning to go back to the ICJ to reopen the Bakassi case? Or, there are other options. Where do you stand in this matter, to start with?
Okay, thank you very much. I think my opening statement would be that the ICJ judgment has been quoted out of context a lot of time by reducing it to a conflict between Cross River and Akwa Ibom, and reducing it to a conflict with respect to 76 oil wells. First of all, the issue of 76 oil wells was never before the ICJ. The ICJ never determined the ownership of 76 oil wells. Number two, the territory of Cross River and Akwa Ibom, which are internal boundaries, called municipal boundaries in law, was not before the ICJ. What was before the ICJ was that Cameroon went to court to request for the whole territory of Bakassi. The territory of Bakassi includes 7 islands. You have 5 of them on the other side, southern portion of the Atlantic Ocean, and then 3 of them, about 8, 3 of them on the western portion of the Atlantic Ocean towards the Cross River line. Now, between 1994, when Cameroon fired at the ICJ, General Sani Abacha created Bakassi local government as a plan B to try to see how to salvage the situation out of that. So Abacha created Bakassi local government out of western Bakassi and took out Ikang, took out Day Spring, took out Western Abana, and took out the Cross River Estuary into Cross River to set up that local government. Now, when the ICJ gave its judgment in 2002, what the ICJ determined was that the ICJ placed the boundary between Nigeria and Cameroon at the mouth of the Atlantic Ocean, dividing the Ikang mangrove forest into 2. It gave a portion of the Ikang mangrove forest to Cameroon and the other balance remaining Cross River. Now, the implication of that judgment is that the ICJ did not cede all of the Bakassi Peninsula to Cameroon. The judgment of the ICJ in page 245 to 251 is very clear on those items. So what are those islands that are left within the Cross River State maritime boundary? You still have the remaining portion of the Ikang mangrove that is shared with the equidistance of TSG1 is there. the King's Point is still in Cross River. Day Spring 1 and 2 is still in Cross River. Now, after the judgment of the ICJ, what the Nigerian government did was to say, okay, let us sign a Green Tree Agreement. What was the purpose of the Green Tree Agreement? Why the judgment was given on the basis of colonial jurisprudence determination, the ICJ judgment itself required an agreement, because the judgment of the ICJ is a policy judgment. It's not enforceable unless the countries agree to sign an agreement to that effect. So the Green Tree Agreement, what was signed, offered Nigeria the opportunity to negotiate the territory based on the judgment of the ICJ. And the negotiation of that territory salvaged a portion of the unceded portion of Bakassi, which includes the Eka Mangrove Forest, Day Spring 1, Day Spring 2, Western Abana, and then the Calabar Estuary. That portion was salvaged. Now, the question is that, what did Nigeria hand over to Bakassi? Nigeria handed over Southern Bakassi and retained Western Bakassi. The judgment of the ICJ in paragraph 251 stated clearly that Cameroon has sovereignty over the eastern bank of the sea, and Nigeria had a boundary and sovereignty over the western bank. Now, when they use sea, Atlantic Ocean, and then the Gulf of Guinea, you need to understand that you're talking about just the international sea. The purpose of the law of the sea of 1982 was to take away the administration of the sea from countries to the United Nations Convention on the Sea.
UNCLOS.
UNCLOS. Before UNCLOS, there was the Vienna Convention of 1969, which brought the principles of pacta sunt servanda. All countries are bound by law signing that
international
convention.
agreements are sacrosanct.
Yes. Now, Cameroon was not a party to that agreement, which is a mistake Nigeria made. But moving beyond that, that judgment now made it possible that Nigeria can negotiate the judgment of the ICJ based on the Green Tree. What were the rights that we had? Article 33 gave us the right to claim territorial sea. Article 74 gave us the right to claim contiguous zone. Article 82 gave us continental shelf and EEZ. Okay. Now those rights, let me just land. So the point I'm making is that the ICJ judgment and the UNCLOS law says that the littoral status of a coastal state will be determined from the estuary. The estuary is the point where the internal waters meets the sea. That's the provision of the ICJ, and that provision of the estuary has been domesticated by Nigeria. The Laws of the Federation 2004, Cap T5. So, Cross River State argument is that, why are you looking, because the dispute with Akwa Ibom is this. The portion of the sea, which is called the Akwa Efa, is the mouth of the river, does not belong to Akwa Ibom, does not belong to Cross River. In international law, the sea belongs to Nigeria. When they say littoral state in international law, it's not Akwa Ibom, it's not Cross River, it's Nigeria. That's why the ICJ said in the conclusion of the judgment that Lake Chad is not a littoral state, but Nigeria is a littoral state. The reference is not to Akwa Ibom State. Okay. So our argument has been this, that you cannot use the purpose of the Supreme Court judgment of determining oil wells at the Atlantic Ocean aspect and forget that the estuary of Cross River State gives Nigeria littoral status to the Gulf of Guinea and then gives Nigeria littoral status to the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, I see the review that you are trying to do, but let's simplify it. What you are talking about is the estuarine southern boundary, which the Supreme Court, relying on the ICJ ruling, said is contiguous to Akwa Ibom State, 200 meters isobath. And because it was those 76 oil wells were contiguous to Akwa Ibom was then seen as a state having sovereignty over those oil wells. They said 24 villages to the north belong to Cross River, but those ones, they will not bring oil. However, the last time the Supreme Court looked at this matter, he said that both parties, Akwa Ibom and Cross River, can find some kind of amicable resolution. Before then, Akwa Ibom had offered 250 million naira per month to be given to Cross River. Cross River rejected it. Now, Cross River says, we are revisiting the matter. What exactly are you revisiting? Are you going back to the Supreme Court, or Cross River is going back to the ICJ? how can this new interest of Cross River, how can it be addressed?
Okay,
it's not about the legalese now.
Yeah, okay, there are two,
what is the option on the table?
There are two practical situations. First of all is the Nigerian territory, from which the Calabar Estuary, the Day Spring Island that was not ceded, and the Kang Mangrove Forest still form part of the Atlantic Ocean and has Nigeria littoral access to the Gulf of Guinea. That's the first issue. That is already by law, gives Cross River State that access. Whether there's oil well or not, our first claim is that we cannot lose our territory by virtue of the fact that you're looking only at oil wells. The 76 oil wells that the Supreme Court determined has been there. But let me explain to you, the purpose of determining the judgment between Cross River and Akwa Ibom, or Cameroon and Nigeria, is not dependent only on oil well, because first of all, there are states that are littoral states without oil well. Ogun State is a littoral state. The closest boundary of Nigeria to Sao Tome is Ogun State. They don't have oil well. There are states that are not littoral states.
We have...
I'm coming.
No, we have oil well in Ogun State.
Ilesha. It's not producing. You don't have derivation. That's
Tongeji, we have oil in Tongeji Island.
There's no derivation on it. Ogun State is not getting anything out of that derivation. That's the point I'm making. Now, the other thing is that you actually do not need to be a littoral state to have 13% derivation, because Section 162 of the Constitution has made it possible that there are two ways you can earn oil wells. One, if you have access to the sea, 200 meters isobath, you have mentioned one. But if you don't have access to the sea, but the oil well is produced within your internal waters and your estuaries, it can be earned. Cross River State has earned 67 oil wells from its own estuaries. In the course of the determination, when we saw the line that the National Boundary Commission drew, which went straight from Tom Short and took the portion of the unceded Bakassi back to Akwa Ibom, Akwa Ibom still got 18 oil wells from that particular portion. So the issue here is not a question of whether Cross River State has oil well or not. We have oil wells. The issue is that we don't want Nigeria to lose its access to the Gulf of Guinea by virtue of refusing to recognize that the estuary, which brings fresh water into the sea, is determined as the littoral boundary status of Nigeria and Cameroon. Now, Cross River State has 8 local governments that have direct boundary with Cameroon, land boundary. Out of that, and then you have additional 3 local governments that have maritime boundary with Cameroon. So we don't want, the issue of oil wells has been sorted. I can tell you because the governor came and wrote to the National Boundary Commission. National Boundary constituted a committee between Surveyor Generals of both states. They saw 85 oil wells, not part of the 76 oil wells. Okay. We are going to get to the 76 oil wells.
I was going to say, let's come there, because I mean, the way you sound is that you're not interested in 76 oil wells. You're more interested in the land boundary and Nigeria holding on to the Gulf of Guinea. So as it stands today, the 76 oil wells don't really matter.
For now, it doesn't matter because there's a Supreme Court judgment on it. And as a lawyer, the judgment of the Supreme Court is final. So the administrative processes, the administrative processes that will face the Supreme Court judgment. Because first, the National Boundary Commission, that was not even before the ICJ. Okay. It was the Hydrographer General of the Federation and Surveyor General who presented evidence at the ICJ.
So if that's the case, then I understand that, and I understand what you're pushing for. But Dr. Abati asked the question around the 250 million naira. Has it been accepted now as part of the amicable solution between Akwa
Ibom State has never offered, and Cross River State has never received any money from Akwa Ibom. I was Speaker of the House of Assembly. The simple process of providing funds, borrowing money to state or dashing money to states will go to the House of Assembly. Can they produce the budget or the evidence?
That's something will matter. Akwa Ibom has not been honest.
Akwa Ibom has not offered anything to Cross River. Okay. It was Senator Lee who was governor. He has never offered anything. Ayade was governor. I was Speaker under Ayade. Akwa Ibom has never offered. Now, what we have always emphasized is that, first of all, determine the territory between Obudu down to Bakassi. Cross River State has 8 local governments. Don't put us into a crisis with Cameroon. We don't want to go to war with Cameroon. And we are happy that the federal government...
Go to war, no.
No, the thing is that, no, if our communities, if they invade our communities, are we not at war? So the thing is that, first of all, save our communities, which is why we are happy what the president has done. The argument was that Cross River State is not a coastal state, it's not a littoral state. The coastal highway that has been designed from Lagos down to Calabar ends up at the mouth of the Calabar Estuary. The deep sea port that is coming is on the core islands. And so we have explained this point to the federal government. Do not lose the Gulf of Guinea because you're looking for oil well in southern Bakassi. The oil wells in southern Bakassi will be sorted because the geological formation from where those oil wells are coming from is in Cross River, it's not in Akwa Ibom, which is why after 13 years, because you know, Dr. Abati, you can only change the maritime demarcation of a country after 10 years if a mistake is made. That's why Cross River couldn't do anything. But for now, once the 10-year got in, Prince Otu came in as governor of Cross River State and wrote to the Surveyor General.
It's 26 years after.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about, no, the judgment of the Supreme Court is 13 years.
Okay.
It was given in 2012. The previous administration. So I couldn't do anything.
So my question, I just want to ask a question, because you've addressed the issue around the Gulf of Guinea, preventing war. I still want you to respond to the question around the dispute between Cross River and Akwa Ibom State, because that's still very important.
Yes.
And we had a Bong Victor attack come here yesterday, and he defended it. He presented his own side.
Yes.
So this is also your opportunity for a right or reply. Do you still maintain that is Cross River going to pursue options to review the allocation or the ceding of the 76 oil wells to Akwa Ibom State? Or are you happy with the way it stands now and still able to work out an amicable solution between both of you, whether you now ask for the 250 million naira that was promised and that hasn't yet been offered?
First of all, there's no dispute between Cross River and Akwa Ibom.
Okay.
Akwa Ibom had no one single territory that was in dispute before the ICJ. When the judgment of ICJ was given over those islands, none of the islands belonged to Akwa Ibom. Akwa Ibom is 25 nautical miles away from the center of the sea, where the ICJ determined. Cross River is 6.2 kilometers away from the sea. The boundary between Cross River and Akwa Ibom came only in dispute because the National Boundary Commission claimed that when they came to Cross River, they didn't find anybody to attend to them. They went and drew a straight line. Because in international law, to demarcate the maritime boundary, you draw what is called baseline from the high tide to the lower tide. The high tide is Tom Short, the lower tide is Odukwane, and they drew that line, which gives part of our estuaries to Akwa Ibom. The process of recovering that is already on, and the process is simple. You can't go to the Supreme Court and say, look, Supreme Court, we made a mistake. We didn't make the mistake. National Boundary Commission made a mistake. They drew a wrong boundary. After 10 years, the boundary has been updated by the International Hydrographic Agency to the extent that part of the Calabar estuary that was not seeded and Day Spring still form part of Nigerian territory for the purpose of littoral aspects of Nigeria. So, Akwa Ibom State, by Section 44 of the Constitution, no state in Nigeria has the ownership of the sea. So, coming to claim Akwa Ibom out of the sea is wrong. What they have is 13% derivation given by virtue of the magnanimous provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. No state. Yes, no state owns part. So, I don't know how Cross River will go and claim. See, the sea itself is made up of the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Guinea, and the sea. What the ICJ referred to, the dispute here, is that if you're drawing a baseline, it's a baseline to determine the territory of Nigeria. After the territory of Nigeria, the both states will come in between. Sorry, I'm coming. Now, they have not, the Joint Maize Commission we are still waiting for the Joint Maize Commission. They came when I was speaker, we went to the ocean, they had difficulties and said, look, give us another 10 years. They have not come. But National Boundary Commission rushed to draw a line. Okay. They will correct that line and the judgment will be reversed.
Real quickly, I want to talk about the plight of Nigerians that are in Bakassi, and this has been ceded to Cameroon.
Yeah,
what's going to happen to the future of those people?
Now, first, Cross River State and Nigeria has tried to do a remedial measure, which is why, God bless his soul, General Abacha did extremely well by trying to take out part of those islands closer to our territory, to Cross River, which were not ceded. Now, we have now opened up territories to accommodate those communities that are not willing to stay in Cameroon. So you have Ikri, Kang, Akpakanya, Atai, Ama, all of those communities have moved back. Now, our problem was because Nigeria could not tie any land territory to the islands. It was difficult to win the judgment. But Abacha did that when the case was already filed in court. Now, the welfare is that a lot of the people, Southwest Cameroon it is called, they have a House of Assembly, about 10 members. 4 of them are Nigerians. They are from Calabar. They live in Calabar. It is a boat ride of about 1 hour, 30 minutes, and you go to work, you come back. Their welfare is not in good condition. As I speak to you, if somebody dies, if an old person dies in Calabar, he will write in his will that, please take me back to Bakassi and bury me, because apart from Bakassi, between Bakassi, Nigeria had boundary in Bakassi up to Equatorial Guinea, a place called Panya. Panya, and that area, they have an ancient shrine of Calabar called Isangidem. That's where they have the CBD, all of these things. They are all there. So the Efik people feel very pain that they lost that territory. So these people who are there, they live in Cameroon, and their welfare is being taken care by the Cameroonian government. Nigerian government promised in the handing over instrument to create a second state constituency to accommodate the returning community. They have not done that. Okay. Nigerian government under Obasanjo promised after they opened up, because the truth is that credit to Obasanjo, credit to Andoaka, Nigeria did not lose its littoral status from the Cross River estuary to the mouth of the sea. It is the only controversy is the area of the sea. That's why I said we didn't lose our littoral status in the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Guinea. It is to the mouth of the sea because they were looking for 76 oil wells. And the question is that why are you looking for oil wells rather than claim your territory first?
So our ethics shrine is gone to them because of geopolitics. Ancestral lands of our people, ancestral areas, gone to them because of geopolitics. And because Nigeria, we didn't do our part at fighting for this and keeping our people. And the welfare of our people also is gone because there's nothing that is being done.
It's terrible. Let me give you a highlight. You wonder why did Cameroon, after getting the colonial treaty in 1913, not file for that territory up to 1994? The French Intelligence Council in 1993 said, look, between 1913 and now, what you used to call as Bakassi Island, because of the inflow of geological formation, has become the highest depository of hydrocarbon and oil and gas in the world, 10%. You better move in there. Cameroon has a broken sovereignty. After Douala Basin, Rio de Rey, it's Bakassi. Cameroon did not have continental shelf, had no boundary with Equatorial Guinea. So they had to go to court to demand that we need to get, which is why the ICJ was smart to say, okay, we'll divide the Ikan mangrove into two so that Nigeria doesn't do. If they are giving the Ikan mangrove, even the back of the University of Calabar would have been inside Cameroon.
Mr. Lebo,
yes.
There are people who hold the view till tomorrow that Nigeria mishandled the ICJ case.
I agree
there
with
are
you.
persons who hold that view. So we don't need to reopen that now because we don't have time. However, I have asked the question. This is the third time. What is the way forward? Because you speak for Cross River extensively. Is it going back to the ICJ or going back to the Supreme Court or the National Boundaries Commission? Or do you want the Tinubu government to take a political decision?
There are simple way. One, first of all, there's a book I read where they said in the trial the most important factor is not innocence or guilt. There's no absolute truth. It's the impression of truth, our interpretation of truth. What happened is that you cannot blame the Supreme Court. Pending when the Mixed Commission was supposed to demarcate the boundary, National Boundary Commission ran there and drew a line, which is an issue of controversy. Cross River State has appealed to the federal government of Nigeria. There's been a joint commission between the Surveyor General of Akwa Ibom, Cross River State, and of the Federation to cure that maritime boundary line, which has been done. That report will follow appropriate steps, go to the National Assembly, go to the President. It will be an administrative remedy. Where a judgment of a court is based on the technicality, you cannot change that judgment by evidence of fact. You change it by altering the technical component of the judgment. So what Cross River is working with now, with
these election cases that were based on technicality.
Well, this is not election. This is not election. So
the principle.
Yeah. So the point I'm making is that there's an administrative process in place, okay, to make sure that error is corrected, and the administrative process is to the benefit of Nigeria, which is why, first of all, we have advocated. Let me tell you something. When I finished office as Speaker, I was appointed as Special Envoy to the Gulf of Guinea. And so I served in that commission, and I saw that from the Gulf of Guinea map, they regarded the Calabar Estuary, Ikan mangrove forest, and this spring as part of the Territorial sea making that is a component of the Gulf of Guinea. And when I came back, I had the privilege of Governor Yade. We met with President Buhari. Before he left office, I said, look, we are making a mistake unless we go back and make this correction. And the Surveyor General of the Federation started that whole process. So our is first get the territories back, which we are 100% sure we are on that process. The issue of Akwa Ibom oil wells and all of that is that in the course of time, you are going to realize that if the sea itself belongs to Nigeria, no one state can go and claim the entitlement of everything in it. Because if you're talking about 200 meters isobath, Akwa Ibom is 25 nautical miles away from the mouth of the sea. Cross River is 7.5 kilometers from the mouth of the sea. But we don't want the fact of the 76 oil wells because we have found 85 oil wells within our internal waters. 18 of them also given to Akwa Ibom. We know that in a matter of time, once this issue is resolved, it will get there. We have not received any gift from Akwa Ibom. We will not receive any gift from them. The issues will be determined at any time.
Maybe some people receive gift from
Nobody received. I was speaker. At least I sat over public accounts. I will know. I will tell you. I'll benefit from it.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Lebo.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time with us this morning.